welcome back to our podcast, Reasons to Care. My name is Claire and...
My name's Michelle. Thank you for joining us again.
So today's episode is Tales of a Lifer. So this is going to be a chat with Aine Penfold. She has worked for Diverse Abilities for a very long time, and we're going to be finding out a bit more about her time at Diverse Abilities.
I'm really excited for this, Claire, actually, because I've seen Aine, but I've never really met her. So to find out a little bit more about yourself, Aine, will be really lovely. So how long have you worked for Diverse?
Well, officially, 20 years, as we were just chatting, actually, and I got my 20-year certificate, which was like, yay!
Yes!
It makes me feel totally ancient as well, if I'm honest, because I don't feel that old. I think I'm a bit like Peter Pan, really.
Yeah.
I'm quite young, really. But yeah, 20 years at Lily's place.
Wow.
But lots of bits before that, which is sort of a bit disjointed, really, but to do with Diverse Abilities.
So is that sort of fundraising, or was it?
No. So before I came to Lily's, I was with in a bungalow for supported living.
Oh.
So one of the first ones that started up.
Okay.
So it was figuring that all out. And at the time, I didn't realise the enormity of it. I was just working with two lovely young lads in a bungalow, and that was it. But when I look back at even that bit, and I look where Diverse Abilities are now with all the bungalows, it was quite an important role that I was playing, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I did enjoy. Again, it was obviously, I'd worked with children pretty much my whole life before that. Previous to the bungalow, I was with a young girl who unfortunately passed away. And I thought, I don't know if I can do this anymore with children. So I'm going to move to adults. Moved to adults. Was there probably for about a year, I think. And then I thought, I just want to be with kids again. So I think that was just a healing process for me, which is what you go through in care, isn't it? You lose people and then you have to heal from that because you're so involved with everything. And then someone who I used to work with years previous to that, probably at college, she was at Lily's place, then Smithers. And she phoned me and she was like, you need to apply for this lead support job. And I was like, oh no, I'm not a lead support. I can just do caring, but I can't be a lead support.
Yeah.
And she was like, don't be so ridiculous. So she literally forced me to apply. And I applied and thought, maybe I can do this actually. And that's where I was as a lead support, which we called it in those days. And yeah, still here now, but progression, everything changed. Smithers / Lily's place. I still call it Smithers. It's always going to be Smithers.
Always be Smithers.
I think that's the problem, isn't it? I always say Smithers and people look at me and I think, oh, sorry, Lily's place, yeah. Because it's changed so much over the years. And then the more children I had, it sounds like I've got loads of kids. I've only got 3, but 3's quite a lot, isn't it?
3 is a lot.
Anyway.
I've got 1 and that's...
That's enough, is it?
Yeah.
I went a bit more part-time sort of towards the middle of my time there. And then a training opportunity came up and I thought, I love training. And I think with the training side of things, because I was caring for people for so many years, I wanted to make it right. And I wanted other people to know what was right in care and sort of give a great standard of care. I think that was the thing. So, and that's really hard to get through to some people, isn't it?
Oh.
And you have to model it and you have to encourage people, especially the new people coming in. Started doing a bit of training. So that was, I think it was an MVQ assessor course I did then. And then it just all kicked off from there, really. Then more stuff that everyone was like, do you want to do this? And I was like, oh, all right, then I'll do that as well. And then moving and handling. And so I do a lot of moving and handling training again, which brings it back to this is how we want to do it here. And that's what I love doing, is sort of bringing different types of training and looking at the training and thinking, how can we make this more wholesome? So it's not just about moving people. It's about all their needs, their sensory needs, their likes and dislikes. And so bringing it all together.
Oh, wow.
So here I am, still.
And then recently, you've made a move and you've split your role, haven't you?
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Langside will kill me.
Tell us about your split role at Langside. What do you do there? What is Langside, for those that don't know?
Langside School's got a really special place in my heart. I was there one-to-one with the girl that sadly passed away years ago as a one-to-one, but employed through her family. So I still had a connection there. But Langside is like a big family. And that's where you just get drawn in, I think, to Diverse Abilities. You sort of always get drawn back. It's a really weird place because it's just, it's always there and you just always get drawn back to it. So when I worked at Langside School, it's for our children who have profound and multiple disabilities, hopefully are going to come up through adult services. And, that's the dream, isn't it? I think with diverse abilities is they start at Langside, they come up through children's services, and then they keep going. That's the dream of having diverse abilities as a whole, is to make transitions, especially for our children, a bit easier in life because it is difficult for them. So at Langside, I do 2 days there as OT assistant. So, I'm there doing all sorts of bits and bobs there as well because I still wanted to work with the children. It was probably about 5 years ago I split my role because the training and being with the children, I was finding it's great to train people, but unless I've got my hands on doing stuff with the children, how can I train people if I'm not up to date with everything? So, as part of my OT assistant role at Langside, we have lots of different professionals at Langside. So we have OTs, physios, obviously we have the teachers. But my OT role is different every day. We go into classes quite a lot and help children with their sensory needs. There might be children that are struggling in class to manage the environment. It's a bit like being a detective, actually, being an OT assistant, I think, or an OT, as our lovely Lizzie is, because you have to fact find, you have to go into a class, you have to see, you might see a child's behaviour and what they're displaying, and you've got to think, why are they doing that? What's going on? Is there something that's going on in the background that I can help them with? Is there something in the environment that we need to change? But also with OT, when I started doing the OT role, I just thought I'd be fixing wheelchairs and equipment and stuff, and it's totally not. It's blown my mind how much there is to it, because a lot of people at school say, oh, that's OT, and I think, is it? And I think, wow, that's OT as well. So OTs actually have a massive responsibility. So it's all equipment, all chairs, all everything. I walk around with a tool bag and a notepad and everything else all day, because you're just in classes being grabbed to do bits and bobs here, there and everywhere. It's all about your hands. It's all about hand function. So we assess the children's hand function when they come in, especially some of the little ones at the moment. That's what we're looking at. So we're looking at how their hands work, how they function, and what we need to do to be able to help them to function a bit more better for them. And then obviously when they come in at the bottom end of school, when they come in when they're really little, which we've got some real littlies at the moment, it's finding suitable wheelchairs for them to sit in at school, or school chairs, which is just mind-blowing, the amount of equipment you can have for these children. But it's a very special place.
And did you need additional training to do that OT role?
No, and that was what was really strange, is that all my experience from the past had just all sort of amalgamated into one. Everything I'd learnt over the years, when I went to do the OT role, I was like, oh, I know that, and I know that. So I can go and do additional training, and I am doing lots of external little bits of training to upskill myself. But generally, everything in care, I think care opens you up to so many avenues, it's ridiculous. And you don't realise when you're doing it, that you can actually walk into different parts of care and be like, oh yeah, I know that, I can do that. And it's really interesting. It's just interesting, and it's keeping yourself upskilled and knowledge,
Nice.
So I guess we've now heard about what your roles, multiple roles would be within diverse abilities. Where did it start? What made you think, do you know what? Care is where I want to be. That's the job I want to do. Where does that passion come from? When did you think this is what I want to do?
I don't know. I just always knew it was what I wanted to do. I can't think of anything in particular that I thought that's what I want to do, but I was just drawn to it straight away. And I think the first contact I ever had was probably the Acorn scheme, which is a very long time ago, when I was probably at college, which is a long time ago. They had a holiday club at Langside, which our children used to attend, and we used to go and look after them in the day, and the kids used to come.
So was that Diverse that had set that up, and you heard about it through college?
It was Langside School, And I think I also did some work experience when I was at college at Langside. So it goes back that far, which is the weird thing. When I think back to, when we were chatting before about how long I've been here, I was like, oh my goodness, I actually don't know. Because there's been that many bitsy bits that it's always drawn me back. Or I've never left, really. I suppose from Acorn days, I don't think I've ever really left, although I did leave to do one-to-ones in different places. I was always drawn back to it, because that's what I wanted to do. So I don't really know where it started. It was just what I wanted to do. And if you ask me today, what's my dream job, this is it. So And a lot of people think that's really corny, and I can't help that. I'm ever so sorry. But it's true. It's just, this is what I want to do.
And I think for us, this is what was important to have a chat with you, someone who we would term as a lifer. You aren't alone. There are lots of other lifers within the organisation. And, I think I'm on the road to becoming one of those potentially. And I think there is something, you're right, really special about diverse abilities that once you start, you might move around a little bit within the charity, but actually it does take that little place in your heart, and
it does,
you do become a family.
You do. I was just about to say, you have such a family feel. I mean, for me, I'm nowhere near a lifer yet, but it's the longest I've been in an organisation, because it has that feel, and it makes caring worth it. I suppose that sounds really corny, doesn't it? But that's
it
how I
all
see
sounds
it.
corny, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But you know, it is what it is. I think as well, it's, the families that you get involved with. I mean, professional boundaries and everything, I find are probably, it's a weird thing to say about professional boundaries with our children and our families, but you can't help but love the families as well, because, especially at Lily's, the children are coming for respite, and you see the parents on the doorstep absolutely knackered and just looking really tired, and just literally they're looking at some of their looks in their eyes, and they look at you, you just think, oh God, you really need this. And then you take their child in, and their child, will have their own challenges for the time they're with us. But you feel really good because you can present their child back to them healthy, well looked after, had a great time. They've done this, they've done this, they've done this. And the parent comes back looks refreshed, or has been out with the other siblings for a bit of time at the cinema, which they can never go to the cinema with their other siblings, or all of that kind of stuff makes it totally worth it. And, getting involved with families, I'm still friends with many, many families of children that we've cared for in the past, and friends as well, friends at work. I mean, how ridiculous is it that I ever thought when I first started at Lily's Place that 20 years later, they'll still be my best friends in my life. It's crazy, and a few more have come along the way, popped on in, but they're still my best friends. So it is your life. It is your life if you let it be your life.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think the families, like for me, there is such determination. I'm in awe of some of our families and how much fight and determination they have. Yeah, I just think it is it's so hard for them, and if we can be that little sort of support along the way, whether it's children or whether it's adults, then that makes my job
and I think
our job worth it.
And I think you mean a lot to them as well. So when they need something, even the most random things over the years, we've had phone calls of the most random things, and they're like, what can I do about this? It's like, oh, we know someone who knows this, hold on a minute, we can help you with that. There's so much to it.
And I think for me, it's as well being there at normally the family's time of need. So we've had it before at Lily's Place, haven't we, where a family's been in crisis because mum's had to go into hospital and have an emergency operation, can't look after the child anymore. And we're like, it's fine, we'll move stuff around, we'll get them in. And to think at the end when you're sending that child home that without you being there, what would that family have done?
And we might be the only place, the one place that they can go. They can't send them to grandparents. They can't have their children looked after by other siblings or family members. This is it. I mean, we had a phone call last week actually from a family who foster and adopt children, and they have their young man, and they were like, right, we need respite for him. And this is at Lawford Lodge, one of our other bungalows. And we haven't seen them for years. And we're like, we have known that family for years, and they just keep popping up. And it's really lovely. It's really lovely because they feel part of our family as well, which is important. They could literally, knock on the door and come in for a cup of tea, and we'd be like, "Yay, come in!"
Yeah. We had it in supported living actually last week. We had a family pop in. It was Christmas time, and we were caring for their son who's unfortunately passed away. And they still wanted to pop in and say hello, which that makes it, doesn't it? Definitely.
I know. And that's hard for them, isn't it? It's really hard.
Really, really hard.
But to support them through those things, the things that we have supported other families through, is really special for us, I think.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask, what would you say is the one quality you think you need to be in care?
Oh my goodness.
For you? And it's different for everybody.
I think you need a lot of patience.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit negative. I don't mean that to sound negative. But, a lot of people say, I don't know how you can do care. I don't know how you can be in care. And I always say, I don't believe you, because if you have a child or a young person or a young adult in front of you who has a need, who's looking at you, talking to you, and they have a need, you're not going to walk away from that person. So it does take a very special person to do it. But I think a lot of people have a caring background in them without even knowing it. And I do believe that, and, when we have new members of staff come to us, and some of them may have no experience in care, I'm a real champion for saying it's really important that we interview them, and it's really important that we give people a chance, because we've had some people who have come from accounting or something.
I was just thinking of, do you remember the man who used to be a window cleaner?
Yes. And we were like, what?
And we were like, what? We interviewed him and we were like, actually, I think he's got it. It's in there.
Yeah,
it's really in there.
It totally was.
He was such an amazing member of staff, wasn't he?
He was.
And
we've had
really
loads
cared.
of them. Yeah. And I think a lot of young people coming up, I think it's really important to get it out there at the moment for young people, because it's not cool at the moment. It's not. I don't know if it ever was cool when I was younger, but
no, I don't think.
I don't know what it was. I think yes, you do get drawn to it, but then later in life, a lot of people seem to think, yeah, why not?
I remember being sat in front of my careers person when I was at school, and I was like, I want to go into care, and they were like, no, why? Why would you do that? There's no money in care. And I was like, it's not about the money.
Totally not.
Just want to go and make someone's life better. And I feel with my experience of, growing up with someone who had a disability, I've absolutely got that within me. It's, that's all I've ever known is to, how can I make someone's life better? What can I do to make life easier, or how can I meet their needs? So, yeah, I think you're right. I think there is this myth, I guess, around care isn't a cool place to go. It doesn't have the money, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah, and it's
so
changed a lot of people's lives that have come to us through work, who may not have thought they wanted to be in the care industry, but then have decided to. And it's changed their life as well.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to be a chef. That's what I wanted to be. And my work experience took me to a children's, not hospice, but like a respite centre. And I was like, my first thought was, I'm going to get too attached. I don't know if I can do this. Yeah, and after that, chefing was no longer. And I went from working at Alba Place, it was called, from working there, I went to college to do caring.
Yeah.
And then carried on volunteering, taking one particular lady to her, like it was a centre on a Thursday night, had a disco and everything like that.
Brilliant.
So took her there on a Thursday. And then about 10 years later, I was actually back in Scotland and caring for her in a sort of residential setting, which was amazing. That was lovely. So, yeah, completely.
I think a lot of it is seeing the development as well, like you were saying about you've helped someone. Again, at school, sometimes the children will come into us and you get their, they do this, they do that, they don't do this, they don't do that. And the change in them so quickly within such a short amount of time when they actually start coming to school and when they have all the input that we can provide them with. And then the same at Lily's place with respite. Some parents go, oh no, they won't eat that or they won't do that. And then we say, oh, they had this and they did this. And they're like, whoa, they don't do that. And it's like, well, they do here.
Yeah.
And, it's like with your own kids, isn't it? They'll do things other places. And that's all really nice and refreshing. And for the parents as well to think they've got their own little personality and they've got their own little, I do this here.
And I think actually that's something that really drew me to diverse abilities. My history before diverse abilities was in the NHS, and I felt there was just so much red tape and you can't do this and you can't do this. When it came to diverse abilities and it was like, yeah, you can. But how are we going to do it safely?
With Dave, Ringo's,
our
and
young man, we took him to Ringo's, and we were like, "Oh, he doesn't breathe very well." But Dad was like, "I want him to go in a Ringo," and we were like, "Only if you're there." So Dad was at the bottom. We lifted him out at the top, didn't we? And put him in a Ringo.
And he was. We were either side. We had two Ringos either side of him. He was in the middle because he was quite a big boy as well. I was looking at him. And he had a wicked sense of humour. And I was like, just breathe, David, please. And he was
breathe.
laughing at me, and I was like, please, I'll hold your head, just don't. And I was in my Ringo trying to hold on to his Ringo thinking, oh God, and Dad's at the bottom going, yay, come on. And I'm like, oh no, I don't know if I can do this. And literally then someone just flew us down, and he laughed and extended all the way down. And I was like, oh, holding on to him.
Don't fall out.
And we got to the bottom, and Dad was like, seeing Dad's face was probably more emotional than anything. And then seeing Dad just lift him over his shoulder, and he was a huge boy. He was a really tall boy, lift him over his shoulder, but his face, when he got to the bottom of it, he was just screaming with laughter, and we were all laughing and all crying. And it was Dad was chucked him over his shoulder and walked back up the hill with him. And he looked at me and he went, just one more time. And I was like, oh no, I didn't think I could do it again. And he was like, come on. And the look in his eye was the look of, I can't do this with my son. I can't do it without you guys there. And I'm never going to be able to do this again. And it might be the only time he does it. And that is ridiculously rewarding. I mean, it still makes me well up now because I just think, oh,
and it was that can-do attitude that I remember standing on that ski slope thinking, I'm home. This is it. This is where I was always destined to be.
When I did your induction, when
I cried and cried and cried watching the old project video.
And I thought, who is this?
Because I remember you played me the video, and it was just children out in the community having fun, accessing activities that they wouldn't be able to normally do, living the most amazing life, making the most amazing memories. And I think I take that for granted. I can do that. I can do that with my children without even having to think about it. But watching these young people do it, and I just remember feeling really overwhelmed, crying, and saying to you, I'm home. This is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm here for.
Because that was in the old days of when sort of projects started up. Project My Time. And we used to take the kids camping, and we got some really funny stories from, some of our friends who also started it up, of children literally all night saying, Amy, are you awake? And she was like, I've been awake all night. But it was her first time camping, this girl, and she just talked all night.
And there's no way her parents would have ever dreamed of taking her camping. But my goodness, why shouldn't she have gone camping?
Exactly.
Why not? Be fine. We see the hoist turn up, we see the airbed, and we think, how are we getting that airbed and that hoist under that? But we made it work because it was important for the family and for the child to experience a camping.
So each episode, we are going to be busting some myths around the care industry. So there are a lot of myths, and it's our job to try and bust them. Caregiving is solely a burden and a sacrifice is this episode's myth. What do you feel about that, Anya?
Politely, totally ridiculous. I don't think a burden, that's, the word,
I don't like
it's not a burden at all. I don't feel like it's a burden. I think it's a pleasure. And I think I'm really honoured to be able to be in these children's lives. And I think that quite a lot. I think I look around school and I look around Lily's place and I look around the staff. And I think I'm actually really lucky that I've got this in my life, because you see so many people in their jobs who are so miserable and not enjoying it, or don't have, maybe they're not in the right place. I don't know, maybe they haven't found the right job. But I've always been happy in this career. I've never not been happy. Even all the jobs that, all the roles I've done over the years, I've enjoyed all of them. I can't ever say I hated that. I absolutely hated that. I didn't. I've just been really lucky to be able to have it in my life and have those people in my life, I think. Sounds totally cheesy.
No,
and I'm not a cheesy person,
right.
but it is true. I've met some amazing people, some amazing young people, and seeing some of the children grow up from really young to not as old as me, but pretty old. It's quite nice when you see them, and you get to know so many people in care, and even other places that I have worked in other schools. Some of the people come to adult services now, and I see them. And there's one young man who I hadn't seen for years, and we used to have a great time. It was in another school, but he's now obviously at adult services. I think he's at the Beehive. And I hadn't seen him in years. And I thought, I wonder if he'll recognise me, because obviously it's a long time ago. And yeah, he did. And he has no speech, but he used to tap his finger for yes on your hand. And I looked at him and I got right down to him and I was like, hey, all right? And he looked at me and his eyes just went massive. And I said, do you remember me? And we were laughing, and then he started being totally inappropriate with me. So then I was like, yes, you do remember me. But he was a real character, and he was really good fun. But in care, you get to meet so many people from different places. It's a very small world. When you look at it, you'll hear a name and be like, I know them. So yeah, I feel honoured. I feel totally honoured to be a part of their lives.
Well, I think you've definitely busted that myth.
100%, yes, definitely.
One down.
I guess so. Moving on from that, my question would be to you, what has been your favourite memory? If you could just choose one, what would be something that stands out of your time at Diversibilities?
I don't know. It's really, really hard.
Sorry, put you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Mean. There's so many, but I think the Ringo thing, being stood there with, I think that was very wholesome, and that was care to me. That was putting it all, if you want to put it all in one sort of situation. We had the parent who really wanted their child to do something, who couldn't do it without the support of others. He was life limited, bless him. And it was about pushing that boundary for him and looking at his face. You were like, do you want to do this? He was screaming in his chair to get out. And it's like, oh God, I'm really going to have to do this, aren't I?
And I guess we had staff that wanted to buy into that as well.
I think you've got to buy in.
They were on the same page, weren't they, as us, of we need to make this happen.
And I think that's where we're lucky as well. You've got to think outside the box. You've got to push the boundaries safely. But you do have to push the boundaries, but you've got to be willing to do it. And I think if you've got that willingness and your heart's in it, when you look at the whole situation, it's just, there are so many memories, but that one does stand out. I talk about that a lot because it makes me laugh a lot. We always use it, don't we, in training or when we're talking to new staff, or it is a story that we often retell, I suppose, because it does mean so much to us. And another really weird memory, a real weird happy memory, is when we were obviously in a much smaller building, when we used to have Sunday roast. Sounds really weird. But I used to work every Sunday, and we used to cook a Sunday roast, like daringly on the edge, depending on what child wanted a roast potato quicker than you could get it cooked. It's like, oh. But that buzz of Sundays, and some children would have been out and then they would have come back, and then you'd have a roast dinner, and everyone, including the staff, you'd be like, dinner's ready! And it would just like be a big home.
It was like a big happy family, weren't we? All sat around one table.
It was carnage sometimes, but you know what? It was fun. And I think you've got to have a really good sense of humour as well in care. You've got to, you've just got to go with what happens.
Exactly.
Which is, you can do. I find it quite easy to let it go and just go with the flow. See what happens. Everything changes, but that's what keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
So also part of what we started on our last episode was notes from our happy jar. So every episode we're going to pull out a note from our happy jar and see what we have. So Claire, what have you got this week, this episode?
So this episode, I have got seeing people go on holidays and absolutely loving life. Highlights include Norwegian Fords, the Spain, of course, and Disneyland Paris.
Oh, wow.
So I'm guessing that would probably be from supported living, because that's not something we don't take our children on holiday. So I guess for you guys, that must be so amazing to see people achieve something that, again, like us with our Ringo's young man, for you, it must be exactly the same.
Yeah, we had it this year, actually. I don't know if it's come from this year, but we had two people who wanted to go to Disneyland Paris, one very committed team leader to making it happen. But then there was all sort of hurdles on the way that you probably wouldn't think of from, like, for you or I that were going. For the transfer, we couldn't seem to get a sort of transfer that helped with disabilities or moving or anything. And it could have easily not happened. But again, team leader was willing and kept looking. And eventually we found somebody that would do a transfer, and they got to go. And the pictures. And then there's one particular lady that goes that gets everything in a book, and she's eager to come in and show you when she comes back. And that's always lovely, because I think for me, I don't work directly in those houses. So it's when I'm out in service or when they come to us and that want to show you, that makes my job worthwhile, definitely. So
we quite often within sort of the short breaks element of children's team, quite often when we're posting on social media, we'll use the hashtag memory makers because we feel that that's what our job is. It's not just about caring for them, and it's enabling families, children, adults to make those memories that will last a lifetime that they wouldn't have done without you. And I think, how great is it that we're memory makers?
Exactly.
100%.
We're making memories for the families and the children and the young people. We're making memories for ourselves as well.
Oh,
and I think that's really important because a lot of my memories of amazing, funny, crazy, ridiculous things that have happened in my life are through my job. I don't like to call it a job. It's weird, but through what I do.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That's important as well for carers, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a difference.
Yeah, because life is so hard as well for some of the people that we support. If we can make it easier, then
why not?
And I think like sometimes people are like, oh, it's Monday morning dread. I don't want to go to work. Whereas I'm a bit more like, whoo, back to work. What are we doing this week? It makes going to work so much easier because you love your job so much, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So my one this episode is meeting a child for the first time at 18 months old and supporting them through to transitioning over to adult services at 19 years old. So this is definitely from children's.
Yeah, definitely a children's team. And it's, again, like you said, the whole dream, isn't it, is of meeting that family when their child is very young and they're very first realising we need some extra support here. Yeah. And then saying to that family, we've got you. We've got this. We're going to be with you. And being with them every step of the way, every barrier, every hurdle, every dilemma, every drama, through illness.
And that is my Ringo boy.
Yeah.
That is what I did. I met him in the nursery at Langside School. And I remember sitting him on my knee. And then who knows, I'm sitting him on my knee when he was a lot older, going down a Ringo. I mean, that was his life. And we saw him through.
And I think that's such an amazing thing for us to be able to do, isn't it? Is you're like the extension of that family.
I was going to say, what an honour, because you don't normally get that, do you? Not every family gets.
No, and if your child's at primary school or something, you might have those teachers in your life for a few years, or if they're at nursery, you've got those workers for a few years. But we're so incredibly lucky that, within children's team, we can potentially see them from very, very little and take them right up through to transition when then we say, and over to you guys.
Yeah.
And, we packaged them up and handed them over to adult services. And then it's like, you guys have got it from here. And I think
then we can learn from your experience as well.
If we're all in one place, learning the same thing, doing the same thing, then for that young person and the family,
the continuity
so
of that care for the family and for us as well to have you guys' knowledge. So,
and I think for the family, how lovely that, they've been thrown into a world of, this isn't what we were expecting, but, we're going to go with it and we're going to go on this journey, but knowing that they've got us with them. I think that's,
totally.
How privileged are we?
Exactly. And that's the whole message, isn't it? Because that's all I keep thinking. It's, I feel privileged that I'm in their lives. I just, it's a good feeling.
Definitely.
So thank you, Anya, for joining us today. And thank you to our lovely listeners for listening in.
Join us next time on Reasons to Care for more stories, myth-busting and notes from our happy jar.
Don't forget, you can find out about our current vacancies at our website. You can also follow us on social media to see what we're getting up to in the meantime.